The Honorable Shri Dharmendra Pradhan Ji, the Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, Government of India. Thank you, sir, for consenting to be the keynote speaker for this session. The other dignitaries on the dais, Dr. S.B. Muzumdar, sir, the Chancellor, Symbiosis International University, Dr. Vidya Rodekar, the Principal Director, Symbiosis, Dr. Rajni Gupte, the Vice Chancellor, Symbiosis International University, Ambassador Sudhir Devre, the Convener of the conference, and Ram Sathe, Chair Professor, the Symbiosis School of International Studies. The speakers for this session, His Excellency Mr. Maqbool Ali Sultan, former Minister of Commerce and Industry, the Sultanate of Oman, Dr. Jyoti Parekh, the Executive Director, Integrated Research and Action for Development, Ms. Indrani Bagchi, the Senior Diplomatic Editor, The Times of India, and Dr. S.C. Sharma from Niti Aayog and ONGC. The dignitaries of the dais, faculty, students, thank you very much for your presence today. I request Dr. Muzumdar to kindly deliver the welcome speech.
The chief guest for this session, Honorable Minister Dharmendra Ji Pradhan, the Vice Chancellor of Symbiosis International University, Dr. Gupte, Dr. Vidya, ambassadors, diplomats, professors, and my dear students. Sir, on behalf of myself and Symbiosis International University, I extend you a very hearty welcome. Symbiosis was mainly started for the welfare of international students studying in Pune. It was established in 1971, and after a few years we started various educational institutions in different disciplines. In 2002, Symbiosis was conferred the deemed to be university status. We have now 45 different institutions under 7 faculties. We have off-campus centers in Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Noida, Uttar Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh in Hyderabad. We are indeed proud that Pune is a favored destination of international students. Sir, we have 20,000 foreign students in Pune, and Symbiosis University attracts about 30,000 foreign students. With these few words, once again I welcome to you. In the morning, the Vice President of India inaugurated the conference, which was followed by session 1, and we are going to be the chief guest for this session. Once again, I welcome you on behalf of my colleagues and students. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I would also like to request you to kindly felicitate the keynote speaker for this session, the Honorable Minister, Shri Dharmendra Pradhan Ji. I now invite Ambassador Devre, chairing this session, to give the introductory remarks.
Honorable Minister Shri Dharmendra Ji Pradhan and distinguished personalities on the dais, I would once again like to welcome all of you to the second session of this conference titled The Gulf Region in India's Energy Security Landscape. One of the main objectives of this conference is to discuss and try to understand the complex issue of geopolitics and geoeconomics of oil and natural gas in the Gulf and its close bearing on India's energy security. The Gulf region has become indeed synonymous with oil and natural gas. For past several decades, they have influenced global energy supplies individually or as OPEC members and played a key role in meeting the energy demand of a large number of countries. Stability of energy politics of the Gulf states therefore continues to be of primary importance to the rest of the world. At the same time, since GCC countries as well as Iran and Iraq depend substantially on oil and natural gas for their budgetary resources, there has grown a kind of interdependence between them and the consumers. There are several developments in the last few months which are aggravating economic and political uncertainties. Falling oil prices is one of them. From around $115 a barrel in June 2014, the price now hovers around $40 to $50 a barrel. The fall in price is clearly due to oversupply. The US shale oil production has increased since 2008 very substantially. However, if the oil price is not above $60 a barrel, it is believed that further investments in shale oil are not likely to be viable. Saudi Arabia, the largest oil producer, decided in December 2014 not to curtail production. Other states, including OPEC members, also apprehensive of their own share of supplies going down, did not reduce their own production. Iranian oil is now expected to come in the market in larger quantities in the coming months. While there is overall global economic downturn, there are also unfortunately violent conflicts raging in Yemen, Syria, Iran and Libya. The implications of these on the oil situation need to be constantly monitored. The strategic relevance of the Gulf region to India cannot be overemphasized. India's dependence for hydrocarbon fuel as the primary source for energy, especially for transportation purposes and petroleum products, is now over 75% of imports, of which nearly 60 come from the GCC and Iran and Iraq. India's own efforts of domestic production, both on land and offshore, have been intensive but not yielded adequate results. Indian oil companies are also engaged in exploration and production activities in a number of countries abroad, including Iran, Iraq, Yemen, Oman, etc., and are exploring pipeline projects with the Gulf countries such as the Oman-India oil pipeline project or the Iran-Pakistan-India pipeline. A number of initiatives are seen to be taken in recent months with the new government with regard to the question of energy security. What should India do to sustain and secure its energy interests with the Gulf countries? How can it contribute itself in achieving that? Maritime security is one of our main concerns. The safety of safe sea lines or the principle of free navigation in the Persian Gulf. These were the points which were highlighted this morning by Honorable Vice President. There is also the issue of climate change. India also plans to substantially increase its renewable energy, especially solar energy, in the coming years in the context of climate change plans. There are thus a number of interconnected issues. We are this afternoon indeed fortunate to have with us Honorable Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Shri Dharmendraji Pradhan, to address us on this subject. And without further ado, may I request you, sir, to kindly address us. Thank you.
Good evening, friends. Dr. Majumdar, Chancellor of Symbiosis International University, Dr. Jyoti Kirit Parikh, the eminent energy economist of India, Mr. Maqbool Ali Sultan, ex-Energy Minister Oman, Madam Indrani Bagchi, the renowned political diplomatic editor of Times of India, Mr. S.C. Sharma, he is representing Niti Aayog and ONGC, Dr. Vidya Yarvekar ji, Dr. Rajni Gupte ji, friends, distinguished members in the audience, ambassadors, think tank, diplomats and young friends. First of all, I would like to compliment Symbiosis School of International Studies for organizing the 3rd International Relations Conference, which focus of India's linkages with the Gulf region. The word symbiosis means synergy between different groups of people. Symbiosis School of International Studies very well epitomizes symbiosis, going by the fact that it has been education hub for the students from 80 different countries. I am happy to learn that Symbiosis School of International Studies is progressing well on the path of contributing to India's effort of promoting good international relations. Friends, as Ambassador Sudhirji in his introduction speech give me a difficult task to give the keynote address of a challenging subject, the Gulf region in India's energy security landscape. Friends, oil and hydrocarbon energy and Gulf region both are synonymous. Nobody can think anything beyond hydrocarbon, beyond petrodollar in Gulf region. Whole identity of Gulf region means hydrocarbon. Friends, India's primary energy supply is coming from Gulf region. So this is a very important and pertinent topic in Indian energy security scenario, when whole Gulf is our extended neighborhood. The Arabian Sea, where on the other part of the Arabian Sea, where in a way, in a natural boundary with a natural neighbor, in the new geopolitics of India and world, Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi has put high emphasis on not just looking east, but also linking west. This has set the direction of the shaping of focus, the Link West policy. The strategic importance of the countries of the Gulf combined with the economic interdependency and presence of a vibrant Indian diaspora in these countries have helped emergence of a very unique relationship between India and the Gulf countries. India's bilateral trade with countries in Gulf region is substantial and growing rapidly. As a matter of fact, India's total trade with only the 6 GCC countries rose from $5.5 billion in 2000 and 2001 to around $134 billion in 14-15, which signifies a phenomenal growth of 2,300%. In this region, UAE is India's largest trading partner, while Saudi Arabia is the second largest trading partner. The Gulf countries together supply over 60% of Indian crude oil imports. Saudi Arabia has consistently been among India's largest oil suppliers. Some years back, it was Iran. In 2014-15, India imported 35 million metric ton crude oil from Saudi Arabia, which signifies nearly 20% share of India's total crude oil imports. Iraq, Kuwait, Iran and UAE are the other major crude suppliers for India in the Gulf region. The total petroleum product import from Gulf was of the order of 8 million metric tons in 14-15, with Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait being the major sources. It is well known that Qatar presently is the single most important source of LNG for us. In the 14-15, Qatar supplied nearly 11 million metric tons of LNG to India, which translates into roughly 79% of India's total LNG imports. Similarly, we source sizable amount of fertilizer from this region from Oman. Let us recall some well-known statistics on the energy consumptions. While the world consumes 12,000 million tons of oil equivalent of energy resource, India consumes 4.4 of the world's total at 522.2 million metric ton of oil equivalents. By contrast, India's population is nearly 17.5% of the total world population. In future, with a growing economy, with a growing market, our energy consumption is bound to rise. If we look at India's energy mix, we found that coal is around 53%, oil is 30%, gas is 8%, while rest 9% is accounted for by nuclear, hydro and renewable energy. Even though some progress is expected in the field of renewable energy generation in India, our dependence largely on the fossil fuel is expected to continue. While we have a steady policy to diversify our source of energy import, our energy imports from Gulf region would continue to remain high. India is the nearest big market for the energy resource, and Gulf countries are our nearest big and reliable source of energy. We both have our interdependency as a producer, as a buyer. It is therefore that India's government is working on building comprehensive energy partnership with key Gulf countries. In line with the Link West policy, the government is steadily increasing its engagement with Gulf countries at the government-to-government level, while also encouraging business-to-business interaction between companies and companies of the Gulf, Company of India and Company of Gulf region. We had the visit of Foreign Minister of Oman, Bahrain, Iran and the UAE to India in the space of last 1 year or so. We also had a visit of the Emir of Qatar to India in March this year. During the course of visit, we discussed avenue to step up our existing LNG tie-ups as well as Qatari investments in Indian oil and gas projects. I was in Saudi Arabia in October last year, where I met the Minister of Petroleum and Mineral Resource. We had wide-range discussion on the world, Asian and Indian oil markets, India's additional requirement for crude oil and LPG investment opportunities, cooperation in research and development, and related global issues. We have invited Saudi companies, including Saudi Aramco, to participate and invest in Indian crude oil storage facilities and the downstream industries in India. Most of you would be aware the successful visit of Prime Minister Modi to UAE in August 2015, which was given a new impetus to India-UAE relationships. The two countries have agreed to establish UAE-India Infrastructure Investment Fund with the aim of reaching a target of $75 billion. We also want to increase our bilateral trade with UAE by 60% in the next 5 years. The India-GCC Free Trade Agreement, which is under negotiation, could help to beginning of a new era of trade. During last 17 months, I have held meetings with my counterparts from Saudi Arabia, Iran, Kuwait, Iraq, UAE and Qatar. I can speak with confidence and sincerity that India and Gulf are inseparable energy partners. During the interactions, I keep stressing that we need to graduate from the present buyer-seller relationship to move vibrant energy partnership. There is potential that India can receive big investment from the Gulf countries in refinery, in petrochemical, retail and marketing, exploration and production and strategic crude reserve. Indian public and private sector companies can similarly make big investment in E&P, refinery and EPC service there. In other words, we need to diversify our energy cooperation in entire value chain of oil and gas and think of long-term sustainable partnership. In this context, we have made a case of doing away with the Asian premium, which is a higher price that we have been paying over the years in comparison of what American and Europeans pay. It is high time that big buyers like India get Asian dividend. Approximately 6.5 million Indians are working in only the GCC states, namely Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates in different domains. These huge bulks of skilled and unskilled workforce from India are playing very significant role in the development of the host countries, including their oil and gas sector. The Indian diaspora in the Gulf region also makes major contribution to India by way of remittance in their parent states, which indirectly adds to the growth of Indian economy. They act like bridge builders and economic connectors. Moving beyond energy, there is immense scope to cooperation with Gulf countries in several other fields, including real estate, engineering goods, transport equipments, IT solutions, pharmaceutical and healthcare, education, banking and financial services. India is a big, vibrant and PM Modi's strong and dynamic leadership have gained traction in international scenario, leading to emergence of India as a favored investment destination. MR Properties, one of the UAE leading real estate companies, choose India for its investment in Indian real estate sector. Few months back, BlackRock has organized the visit of a delegation of big investors to India, which had a number of important investment funds in the Gulf region. A number of Indian institutions of higher studies have opened international campus in UAE and other Gulf countries. I feel that more such initiative would help both the bilateral trade relationship as well as the large Indian diaspora spread across Gulf countries. My ministry has also undertaken skill development initiatives relevant to the hydrocarbon sector. I believe that this should help Indian on-skilled and semi-skilled workers in the Gulf to move up the employment ladder. With these words, I would like to conclude my speech. I look forward to your views and comments on what more government needs to do in the Gulf region to improve our energy security. Thank you all.
On behalf of all of you and my own, I would like to deeply thank Honorable Minister for a very comprehensive, very useful and insightful speech that he has given to us just now, outlining the policies of the government on petroleum and gas with special reference to the Gulf. Sir, your remarks that there should be a comprehensive energy partnership that needs to be built between India and the Gulf countries couldn't be more opportune. I think what we have said that instead of buyer-sellers relationship which has existed for so long, we must move towards a vibrant partnership. I think that is the need of the day. and also you're focusing on building value chains as well as seeking investments from there, from the Gulf countries, decisions regarding the premium which has been done away. All these are very positive and healthy developments for the ongoing cooperation between India and the Gulf countries in this very vital sector of energy. Once again, thank you very much, sir. We have now a very distinguished panel to discuss this subject, and I would like to call on His Excellency Mr. Maqbool Ali Sultan. He is the former Minister of Commerce and Industry of Oman. He also served as the President of the Oman Chambers of Commerce and Industry. He was Chairman of the Oman Oil Company and has been associated with a number of industries and capital market. We are indeed privileged to have such a distinguished person from Oman.
Honorable Minister of Petroleum and Gas, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Vidya Yeravedekar for inviting me to participate in this conference and to address this session on the Gulf region in India's energy security landscape. Energy drives life and is central to continued human development. There are 7 billion people on the planet who use energy every day to make their lives richer, more productive, safer, and healthier. By 2035, the world's population is projected to reach 8.7 billion, which means an additional 1.6 billion people will require energy. Over the same period, the GDP is expected to more than double, with non-OECD Asia contributing nearly 60% of that growth. China and India are leading the non-OECD growth, and by 2035 will be the world's largest and third largest economies, jointly accounting for approximately 1/3 of global population and GDP. It is important we understand what constitutes energy security for India, or indeed anywhere. In its simplest form, it relates to safeguarding India's energy future by securing a stable, reliable, and secure supply of energy at affordable prices. This sounds rather straightforward, but behind this simple definition is a set of complex issues that need addressing. Failure to do so could very well jeopardize India's long-term economic ambitions. Let us be clear. Energy security is not a single problem experienced by a single country. It's a collective challenge that calls for a collective solution. Only by coming together, as we have today, can we address common concerns and develop holistic responses based upon shared experiences. Currently, India meets more than 50% of energy needs through coal, which is mostly supplied from its huge domestic reserves. After coal, oil is the second largest source of energy, making about 36% of energy needs. Most of the oil is imported, and in fact 50% come from GCC, mainly Saudi Arabia, but also Kuwait, UAE, Oman, and Bahrain. And His Excellency the Minister has explained this in detail. The share of natural gas in India's energy mix is 7%, and although India is an important producer of natural gas and its reserves are increasing, it will remain dependent on imported gas. Here again, Qatar, one of the GCC countries and the largest exporters of liquid natural gas in the world, meets 65% of India's imports. Oman also sells small volumes of LNG to India. Renewable energy sources, which include hydropower, solar, and wind, contribute around 7% of the total energy mix. It has been estimated that to meet the basic requirement of its citizens, the Indian economy must grow at a rate of 8 to 9% per annum over the next 20 years. And to meet the energy requirement for such a fast-growing economy, India will require an assured supply of 3 to 4 times more energy than the total energy consumed today. Of course, India's energy security will partly be addressed by advances in technology, facilitating the extraction of India's natural resources and making the benefits of nuclear, wind, and solar power more easily available to a broader section of the population. Even so, there will still be a significant deficit. Meeting this deficit is a big challenge. Take hydrocarbons as an example. India's relatively large crude oil deficit is largely met by imports from GCC. However, this deficit is not only for local demand. In fact, despite being a net importer of crude oil, India has become a net exporter of petroleum products, and by investing in refineries designed for export. And indeed has been a constant and reliable source of petroleum products to several Gulf countries. So we also rely on India for part of our petroleum products. Considering the current state of India's trade and favorable political relations with GCC countries, GCC would continue to meet India's future energy needs and will remain the most important energy suppliers to India in the future. Now, just to reassure our friends in India of the capabilities of the Gulf countries to supply that crude, Saudi Arabia has almost 1/5 of the world's proven oil reserves and is the largest producer and exporter of total petroleum liquids in the world, while Kuwait holds the world's 6th largest oil reserves and is one of the top 10 global producers and exporters of total petroleum liquids. United Arab Emirates is a member of OPEC and with nearly 100 billion barrels in reserves is a major oil exporter, producing approximately 2.8 million barrels per day. Oman, although a small producer, is still an important exporter of oil and gas. Qatar has vast reserves of natural gas and is the largest exporter of LNG. Ladies and gentlemen, cooperation in energy is not only about the import and export of oil and gas, and you said that, Mr. Chairman, just now. It is also about collaboration in building infrastructure, power plants, refineries, joint petrochemical plants, energy-based industries, and other related services. India would need huge investments in these and other energy-related projects. And the GCC investors, whether public, such as the sovereign funds or private investors, should look at MEC in India in this lucrative sector and seriously consider in investing in feasible projects. India, on the other hand, should liberalize its economy further and create an investor-friendly environment to make the investments happen quickly. Some of these projects could also be established in GCC as joint projects. Ladies and gentlemen, Oman and India started this cooperation many years ago. Allow me to give you some examples. Oman-India Joint Investment Fund. This fund was established in July 2010 with an objective to participate in investment opportunities in India. The fund started with a paid-up capital of $100 million with equal participation from State General Reserve Fund, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Oman, and the State Bank of India. This fund has been fully deployed in a number of investments, and the second fund of $300 million is planned, and the management is studying energy-based projects. 2, Oman-India Fertilizer Company, and you mentioned that, Your Excellency. This world-scale ammonia-urea fertilizer manufacturing facility in Oman is equally owned by Oman and India. It was built at a cost of $1 billion in 2004. The plant produces 1.65 million tons per annum of urea and 250,000 tons of ammonia. Urea is being exported to India under a long-term offtake agreement. The government of Oman supplied the gas, which is the feedstock used to produce the fertilizer, at a subsidized price of only 80 cents per 1 million BTU at a time when the international prices exceeded $8. India got the fertilizer it badly needed and also made a good return on its investment, and still does. OMIFCO completed its 10th year of commercial operation this year, and OMIFCO was India's largest joint venture abroad. 3, Bharat Oman Refineries. This is a joint venture company formed by Bharat Petroleum Company Limited and Oman Oil Company to set up a 6 million tons refinery at Bina in Madhya Pradesh. It produces LPG, naphtha, gasoline, diesel, and other products. The project cost was $2.4 billion, and Oman owns 26% of this project. The Jindal Al-Shadid Iron and Steel Plant in Sahar is another good example of collaboration. Here again, Oman supplied gas to this $464 million plant at subsidized rate. Basing on this cooperation, India and Oman are exploring other ways of mutual benefits in areas which could help India to secure its energy requirements. These include the undersea gas pipeline. The Oman-India pipeline was an initiative that was first discussed in the 1990s. Now, technological advances make the project more feasible economically. Security obstacles have been removed, especially as India and Oman have the necessary maritime agreements in place. However, with the limited supply of gas, Oman looks at Iran to supply the gas. After lifting the sanctions, Iran would be an ideal partner in this venture. The project, which will become the Iran-Oman-India pipeline, will hopefully happen. According to studies conducted by an Indian firm, the project would cost $4 to $5 billion, and it would be advantageous to all 3 countries, Iran, Oman, and India. Crude Park. Oman has built a new deepwater port and dry dock in Duqm on the Indian Ocean. Oman Oil Company is currently developing an energy cluster in and around the port, including a refinery, petrochemical project, crude storage terminal, and pipelines. One of these facilities, which may be of special interest to India, is the crude park. It would provide short and long-term storage for crude oil. At this stage, we could tailor part of the crude storage facilities specifically towards India's need and would very much welcome discussions on that subject. Taking part in this project, India would benefit from having offshore strategic storage, and the geographic proximity to Duqm makes this location only a couple of days sailing from India an ideal and practical approach. Not only would this be a very practical part of the solution to underwriting India's energy needs, it would help the further integration of the hydrocarbon interdependencies between India and the Gulf countries. Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you some examples of potential cooperation between India and GCC. Renewable energy. Last week, India announced a plan to curb its rate of carbon emissions and generate more electricity from renewable energy sources. According to the plan, India would produce 40% of its electricity from non-fossil fuels by 2030. A key element of this is solar energy, which both the Indian and the GCC governments are actively pursuing. Joint investments, studies, research, and innovation between India and other GCC countries in renewables would not only benefit India, but would also help our countries in a big way. While oil and gas will there be underground in the GCC for many years to come, it will not be there forever. UAE has recently announced that it will spend $35 billion to expand non-oil energy assets, including solar and nuclear. Other GCC countries are also looking at renewable energy very seriously. Oman certainly is looking at it to how to enhance oil recoveries through solar energy in a big project which turns water into steam and is pumped into the ground to let the heavy oil come up. GCC will benefit from India's affordable engineering and designing capabilities, while both sides will benefit from joint investments. Nuclear energy. India operates 21 small nuclear reactors with productive capacity of 5,800 megawatts. Meanwhile, the GCC states are dependent mainly on gas-fueled power plants supplemented increasingly by oil. They will face increasingly difficult choices and growing opportunity costs of channeling hydrocarbons to power generation versus more productive industries like petrochemicals. At the moment, GCC operates no nuclear plants, although the UAE's internationally endorsed plans are advancing. This is an area where the GCC and India could collaborate. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you that cooperation between the GCC and India has a long history. Archaeological discoveries in eastern part of Oman, in Ras al-Had, have indeed confirmed that the Omani merchants moved between the international civilization in the 3rd millennium BC. These discoveries have provided an undoubted evidence of trade relations between Oman and the civilization center of India. Early tradesmen in the Indus Valley who traded in copper became interested in Oman because of vast copper deposits in Oman. The question of energy security is highly complex and multifaceted. How India's energy sector develops over the coming decades will have profound implications, both for the country's own prospects and for the global energy system as a whole. Indeed, I expect energy security will become a defining element of the GCC-India relationship. We share common goals. It is time to work together more closely. We look forward to further collaboration with India, our partner and friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Mahmood Ali Sultan. You have given us a very positive outlook towards India's energy relationship with the Gulf, mentioning several joint ventures which are already working between India and Oman and GCC countries. You refer to the ideas of energy cluster, which may be of interest to India, in which Oman and GCC countries are working. The element of renewable sources of energy, in which your suggestion of a joint investment with GCC again is very valuable. So also in the nuclear sector. And finally, when you said that this is a defining element between India and GCC countries, it is very, very encouraging. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Dr. Jyoti Kirit Parikh. She is the Executive Director, Integrated Research and Action for Development. She is one of India's leading energy scientists and economists. She has worked in Planning Commission, in the Indira Gandhi Development Research Institute, and on a host of issues relating to energy. Currently, she is a member of the Prime Minister's Council on Climate Change. Over to you.
Honorable Minister Dharmendra Pradhan, Chancellor Dr. Majumdar, Dr. Rajni Gupte, Dr. Vijay Rao, and Ambassador Devre, my fellow panelists. It's a great pleasure to be here in this university. It's really a magnificent place where I can see that number of students and faculty are pushing the partnership frontier in many directions. I should say that, and also His Excellency Sultan covered many of my points also, that our cultural ties began much before the oil was discovered, and it can be seen in many of our facets of life even today, whether it is Iran, Iraq, Arabian civilization and so on. So it is we are all sharing certain common genes, and that forms a bedrock also for many more partnerships. Since then we have petroleum partnerships, then we have had now gas pipelines and different types of partnerships. Now we are thinking of going into renewable and electricity and other partnerships, and finally it should be also climate change partnerships. So with this is the kind of theme that I would like to develop. My institute, we are doing SARC Energy Regional Grid, and there we are finding that we need to have South Asia partnership, and whenever we see that Bhutan or any other countries, they have not developed hydro potential to the extent that they should have, and Bhutan has been selling electricity to India. It had per capita GDP half of that of India's some time back, and already it has twice per GDP per capita than India. So everybody benefits when there is a cross-border power trade or cross-border energy trade. This concept of SARC energy grid is also looked at it little more than that, and we found that I was in Myanmar last month, and it was discussed that South Asia and East Asia, Myanmar is the link between the two, and we have also BIMSTEC partnerships and so on. So, and on the west side, we are also looking at CASA. Central Asia is supplying electricity to Afghanistan, and then we have also Gulf region partnership can be added to this. So we have to think much wider in terms of our scope and keep focus on the changing times. Now we have energy efficiency and renewable energy stress coming up because of climate change. We were also party to the India's Nationally Determined Contribution, INDC. We worked out India's energy scenarios till 2050 and how much India will need in terms of different types of energy sources, and whenever we increase renewable energy, we always need something else to support it. Grid balancing is becoming a very important issue, and if you have solar which is available only 8 hours, then we need a supporting source for the remaining time, or whenever solar drops because of the monsoon or clouds or wind drops. So we need another source like hydro and or gas. So that way energy is a sector which is more secure the more diversities. It needs diversity, it needs many types of sources supporting each other, which could be, for example, power sector can be supplemented by so many kinds of sources, which it could be nuclear, coal, oil, gas. And within this region of Asian region, India has coal, Saudi Arabia has oil, Iran has oil, gas, and so on. So with diversity matching with each other, we can do very well together. It was when we began this work on South Asia, it was felt that every country has a shortage of electricity, shortage of sources. Afghanistan has only 32% of the people have electricity, and on the whole, South Asia has 67% of the people have electricity, the remaining don't have electricity. So we need to have this development deficit has to be brought down by more and more cooperation. And it was found that India has different coal and energy mix, whereas in the Bangladesh there is gas and so on. So we have worked out that system. Similarly, we can do the same with other regions. Also, we found that it helps to have time zones, separate time zones, and we can exchange electricity that way. Almost when it's night in Bangladesh, we can still supply electricity to India and vice versa. So we have looking at that from hour by hour type of season by season and so on. So similar can be thought of between East Asia and if we have a larger vision, we can combine the whole Asia in that manner. We also need to have in the Gulf region is a source of energy for oil, especially oil and gas. India and South Asia are sink of energy. So I would like to look at it beyond India, but also South Asia and also the whole Asia. We can think of it in a big, larger vision. Time-bound plan to reach every household has to be also associated with this. And this current ministry is doing excellent work in reaching out to all the households who do not have energy through LPG and through also renewable energy and grid connections. We have to congratulate them for taking very innovative measures, and we hope that the Gulf region will help in this endeavor where we can sustainable energy access to all is reached. Currently, we are observing SE for all, which is sustainable energy for all decade. It was thought that it would be SE for all 1 year, when at the end of the year they realized that it needs to be a decade. So that SE for all UN decade, and now UN has negotiated sustainable development goal in which access to energy is one of the important element. Currently, 1.3 billion people don't have electricity, and 2.7 billion do not have cooking fuels on a regular basis. So we need to work out a development partnership which will also turn into energy, climate change, and environment, and renewable energy partnerships. And the vision that my predecessors have pointed out is correct vision, and also we could think in a larger way when we connect the different regions, different sources of energy, and different types of development needs. Thank you.
Dr. Parikh. Thank you very much, Dr. Jyoti Parikh. You have touched upon partnerships which extend from petroleum, gas pipelines, renewable and climate change. There is the holistic partnership that will be between India and the GCC countries, which are based on the bedrock of long cultural and civilizational ties between us. You also mentioned energy sector needs diversity. That is a very important point which you have made. And referring to LPG, which has now reached which is reaching all households in India under the initiative of the government, in which you have also sought cooperation from the Gulf region. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mrs. Indrani Bagchi. She is a senior diplomatic editor with the Times of India, and I'm sure most of you must be reading her columns, which are focused on current events, foreign affairs, issues of defense. She covers India, Pakistan, China, terrorism, nuclear weapons, the whole host of issues, including energy. So over to you, Indrani.
Good evening, and thank you everybody for welcoming me to this beautiful campus. If I had such a campus when I was growing up, I'm not sure I would have wanted to graduate. But Minister Pradhan, Dr. Mazumdar, Dr. Yeravdekar, Dr. Gupte, Mr. Devre, ladies and gentlemen, there have been many speakers before me, and covered a lot of ground on India's energy security. I want to give you a different perspective, a perspective of someone who's followed a lot of the stories that have worked around the issue of energy security over the past decade and more. There was a time not too long ago when the dominant discourse on energy security was all about pipelines. For years and years and years, we have covered the story about the Iran-India pipeline through Pakistan, which was not going anywhere then and not going anywhere now. So it was actually a matter of extreme pleasure for me to hear Mr. Sultan say that the way to go is the undersea pipeline between Iran, Oman and India. It's a story that I covered when the Indian company that he spoke about did their first study on the feasibility of an undersea pipeline. And it's even greater pleasure now that that technology has become feasible to work on an undersea energy infrastructure corridor between covering Iran, Oman and India. But that is the part of foreign policy which Mr. Devre, IC Ambassador Ahmed will have been at work for years and years, and their next generation diplomats will be at work, because those are the big challenges for the country. We talked about the Iran-India pipeline. We talked about the North-South corridor, which might bring oil from Russia through Central Asia, might join Central Asian oil from Kazakhstan to the Caspian Sea basin. We looked at the Baku-Ceyhan pipeline. All of this seems such a long time ago, but we looked at the Baku-Ceyhan pipeline, which was taking oil from Azerbaijan across to Turkey. We wondered whether there would be a pipeline that could bring some of that gas, some of that energy across Israel through the Eilat-Ashkelon pipeline down to a place where they could be put onto super tankers and brought to India. So we explored all of these stories, and all of these happened at a time when we were at the price of oil had just kept climbing and climbing, and we were at $115 a barrel, $120 a barrel. It was those were very, very different days. Today, if you look at the oil prices, if you look at oil prices at between $40 and $50 a barrel, it seems kind of incongruous to think about energy security in that same way. Yet, the issue of energy security, I would say, has actually become a lot more multifaceted and a lot more complex. a decade ago, India was considering looking at only places where you could get cheap oil. We went through another phase of trying to buy overseas oil fields from Russia to Kazakhstan to Angola. Everywhere we found China. At that point, China was growing like a giant and was basically hoovering up all the oil fields that it could find. And most places, India was on the losing side. But then China found, as Japan had found before it, and the US before Japan, that owning an oil field in a distant country does not actually guarantee you that oil. We were visiting Sudan several years ago, and it's a place where India and China jointly own an oil project. One of the things that we found, which was actually quite amusing, was that this oil that was exported from Sudan did not really make it to China, because it was the international oil market, as you know, is a very well-established, very mature market. So it was the oil was actually going to the highest bidder. In this case, it was invariably Japan that was picking up the oil, which was amusing in its own way and ironic in a very, very different way. So it's not exactly so that wasn't a panacea for our troubles either. But today we are in 2015 and we are looking at a very different oil future, energy future. We are looking at a very different climate future, and we are looking at a very different India. So we are looking at an India that ought to be growing and should be growing at between 8 and 9% for the next decade or more. It's not just fossil fuels that will drive the Indian growth, but as the Minister said, and quite rightly, it will still be the biggest chunk of India's energy mix. So how do we get it? What do we get it? What do we get? And where do we get it from? That is really not the question that I would like to answer today. The question that I would rather look at is, what are the different areas that go into the complex mix of what we call energy security? And here I would not just look at oil, where we have the traditional oil acquisitions we know about. We know the issues there. We know the issues of transportation. We know the issues of strategic reserve, long-term contracts. Dr. Sultan talked very well about building a strategic offshore reserve. We are currently in the process of building our own oil reserve, and as Minister Pradhan said, we've made deals with both Kuwait and recently with the UAE when the Prime Minister was there to populate that particular oil reserve. But the second source of fuel that we should be looking at a lot more is gas. As gas is, as you all know, is much cleaner fuel than oil, and the aim for India ought to be to move more and more towards a gas economy. For that, of course, we will have to build a much better infrastructure. We will have to move to more sources from Qatar. Qatar is an overwhelmingly large source of gas for India. But what we should be looking at, and I presume what Minister Pradhan works on day and night, is building of a national gas grid. And this is where an offshore pipeline, an undersea pipeline for gas between Iran and India comes in very handy. The third issue, which is far more interesting, is what is India's footprint? How India's expanding security, political, diplomatic footprint across the Gulf, the GCC countries and Indian Ocean works towards its energy security. So look at a couple of issues here. Over the past 10 years, we have improved immeasurably our ties with the Gulf Arab countries, which is a very interesting situation when you come to think of it. India has had very, very long relations with Iran and Gulf Arab countries, but we have hesitated at a very intangible level, and you couldn't say at which point we hesitated, but we did. For those countries too, we were a source of manual labor, or ABCDs as they are called. It has been in the past decade that the image of India has changed immeasurably in these countries. We are no longer just a provider of manual labor, and although 7 million Indians live and work in GCC countries. We are a growing economy of people with hugely expanded technological capability, and a security capability that has been recognized and has been manifest in all of these areas. I will give you two small examples. In 2011, the Indian rescue of almost 17,000 of its nationals from Libya, which was in the middle of a war at that time. And earlier this year, when India mounted this enormous rescue operation in Yemen of its nationals when the bombing of Yemen started, both of them have forever changed both India's outlook, India's footprint there, the potential Indian role in that region, because for the first time we are looking at India as a net provider of security in this region. And this is very important. As the US lowers its dependency on Middle East oil, it also leaves open a strategic security space. Can India take its part in fulfilling that particular role? I would say yes, and I would say that it certainly in the past from the past few years, we have been putting those steps forward to expand our strategic footprint in those areas. In the last 3 years, Indian ships, Indian naval presence has made it possible for there to be no piracy incidents in the area east of the longitude, 65-degree longitude, which is an amazing feat. We don't actually compliment the Indian Navy for this, but it is an amazing feat. And you just saw this week that we are no longer in the high risk. We are no longer considered a high risk area. All of this has put a very, very different image to India's capabilities. The more India puts a strategic foot forward, puts a larger security footprint in the region, we would be able to secure lines of not just communication, but lines of energy access from the Gulf to the growing economies in South and East Asia. The importance of keeping the Straits of Hormuz open, the importance of keeping open lines of communication in the Indian Ocean, in the Arabian Sea. All of this is something that India can do and is doing. It is the pace of activity you may want it to be speeded up a little, but if you look at this larger picture, then you can then place why the Prime Minister made two almost back-to-back visits to Seychelles and Mauritius in March and to the UAE in August. Why are the Gulf countries also looking at India right now? I told you about the US, the departing or sort of the declining US presence. There are other issues that make India a lot more attractive to the Gulf. The growing economy is one, an area for investment is another. We are now probably the only growing economy in Asia now, given China's slowing demands and slowing economy. Japan too is more or less stagnant. It hasn't yet come out of its own recession. So India is really the big hope. If the Indian government makes it easier for companies to invest, for countries to come in here, opens up energy sectors, we are looking at a very, very different energy future for India. Where does all of this lead the Indian strategic sector? Our strategy is not merely to look at the Gulf countries as a source of cheap oil. It would be to expand India's outlook or India's space well beyond the area that we occupy, well beyond South Asia. And that would include west towards the Gulf of Aden, east towards the Straits of Malacca, and south well into the South and Central Indian Ocean. That is when we would be looking at a very different picture when we talk about India's energy security. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Indrani, for giving a very fascinating perspective. You said that it is not the cheap oil that we should be looking for, but larger strategic space. You also talked of the complex mix that goes into the energy security that we should be looking at, where India's footprint has now reached, and how does India's clout work towards energy security. All are very interesting takes. Thank you very much. Our last speaker among the panelists is Dr. S.C. Sharma. He is from Niti Aayog. Dr. Sharma was involved in the dismantling of administered price mechanism for oil sector and developing market price structure for natural gas in India. So he has vast experience in this field. Dr. Sharma, over to you.
Honorable Minister Dharmendra Pradhan ji, Dr. Majumdar, fellow colleagues and ladies and gentlemen. In fact, since morning I had been listening quite a lot about oil supplies, oil security, the Gulf supplies, what should be the bilateral and the multilateral relations should be there between the different countries, and what should be the nature of these relationships. But one of the critical things which I had been looking for is perhaps which India likes the most is perhaps the affordable oil pricing, and I'm going to talk a bit about those issues where India's economic growth is impacted due to the high oil prices, and also how the supplies, the future supplies from Middle East and all other different sources of energy could be augmented to meet the energy security of the country. In fact, India has been, in 2014, India is one of the largest India had incurred the largest growth on energy consumption, and if you just have a look at The growth in coal consumption has grown by about 11.1%. The oil consumption growth had been somewhere close to around 2.5%, and the LNG consumption growth had been somewhere close to around 2 to 3%, making an overall energy consumption growth of about 6.5% for the overall. Now, if we talk about the energy security, well, we could also have to talk about coal as one of the sources of energy, because that forms about 55 to 56% of the total energy basket. And that's how, I just want to put a little bit flavor of coal as a form of energy in the total energy basket, energy security basket. And in fact, if we have a look at the coal import during 2014-15, they had grown by about 20%. India imported about 250 million tons of coal, and that's the highest by any country at any time. So we not only have to look at the West for our oil and LNG import needs, but we also have to look at the East in Indonesia, Australia, and to some extent in China also for our coal import needs. And I think that's happening, and of course number of collaborations are being done on to acquire the coal blocks or coal imports from these regions. Also, we import some amount of oil from the East and Far East, specifically in Malaysia and Indonesia. To diversify our oil basket, we also import some amount of spot LNG from these regions, from Malaysia, Indonesia, Sakhalin in Russia, and so on. Now, how do we go about the energy security? In fact, China's coal consumption has declined this year by about 2.5%, and that's quite a lot of surplus of coal would be available from China. So maybe, we could even look at importing coal from China. Last week, some of the issues. Last week, we had Saudi Oil Minister Ali Al-Naimi talking that there is no premium on Middle East oil for supplies to the Asia and Asia Pacific markets. Last week, Wood Mackenzie also analyzed some of the issues on the Asian premium on Middle East crude, and they found that the Asian premium on Middle East crude has declined by about $2 per barrel, and it is competitive by about $1 per barrel when it is compared to the crude oil imported from the west of Suez. Though Indian and Asian countries have a very large dependence of crude oil sourcing from Middle East, but some level of diversification has happened in the last couple of years, and this has made markets somewhat competitive. But if we just have a look at the future, some of the big pundits, they have forecasted that the oil import dependence on Middle East is going to grow from a current level of 30%. It could go up to 45-48% because Middle East holds a very large amount of both oil and gas undeveloped reserves, which could be developed at a very low cost of production. And that's going to be one of the major strengths of Middle East oil and gas supplies starting from 2020, 25 and 2030 onward, when its share of oil exports could be somewhere close to around 45 to 48%. One of the major issues on which the Indian energy markets are sensitive is the competitive energy prices within coal, oil and LNG. at least for the power sector. Some of the shift has happened for the power generation from the LNG-based power to the coal-based power in a big way. Even some of the refineries, in fact, I had been just looking at the SR's refinery where they are using coal for their captive power generation and for the steam generation for the boilers from shifting from the furnace oil or the pet coke. So that's one of the measure of competitiveness which is happening in the industry as well as for the power sector to shift fuels, whichever is the cheaper fuel, they would shift to that. And in fact, to be very frank, the SR refinery is making somewhere around $1 to $1.5 per barrel of incremental refining margins by doing so. Also, the oil and LNG prices have to be competitive as the emerging markets cannot afford a very high oil and gas prices for a long period of time to spur the growth. The emerging markets have seen a decade of high oil prices since 2005 to 2015 and hope that the low oil prices would continue for some time to spur the growth of emerging markets, and that will certainly help both the suppliers as well as the buyers for medium to long period of time. I just would like to touch upon some of my slides with these few remarks. One of the basic rule for where to source from the oil or LNG, basically the two things which are quite important. Either you should have a very large quantum of oil and gas or the energy reserves and ability to develop them at competitive prices, or the country should hold a very large quantity of foreign exchange reserves so that you can buy the energy from anywhere, wherever you feel like, on the competitive terms. However, the Middle East is somewhat different because 1,000 million tons of oil moves from the Middle East, and every country has to depend on the imports of the Middle East crude. And that's why the sourcing would continue in a big way from Middle East region. And as I mentioned that the oil production share of the Middle East is going to grow from a current level of 30% plus to about 45% by 2030-35. But the importance of Middle East is going to grow much bigger in next 10 to 15 years time frame. Well, largest market, but we have oil and gas production is by and large remained stagnant. This year, oil consumption growth so far for the last 6 months had been at around 6.8%. The country's oil economy budget in last 15 years has grown from $6.3 billion in 2001 to about $94 billion in 2013-14, and of course the impact of low oil prices had made it feasible to lessen the oil economy budget from $94.5 billion to about $77 billion in 2014-15. Now the big question is that last 20 years India has also incurred about $2,200 billion in excess of foreign exchange money for imports of oil due to high oil prices. Will oil prices will remain at this level of $40 to $50 per barrel? Why oil prices have been volatile during last 10 years? So that's one of the big questions which so far no one has been able to answer, and what's going to be the future for oil and gas prices, that still hangs in Now, what I did some of analysis looking at different issues. When oil prices touched at $100 per barrel way back in 2007, in fact, the people asked questions the then oil minister of Saudi Arabia, he is one of the most experienced person in oil and gas trade. They asked him that, yes, why the oil prices are going up? He said that markets are well supplied and OPEC or Middle East has no role to play in spurring the oil prices. You could, and the oil prices have become more speculative, and that's what is the money being deployed on oil future is making the oil prices go up. Now, excessive deployment of capital on oil futures on NYMEX and CME could be one of the reasons for oil prices going up and down. Daniel Yergin, during his recent visit, that was sometimes in April 2015, when I asked him that, what do you think of oil prices going up and down? He said that, and I asked him that how much role the demand supply and the deployment of excess capital on oil futures plays on moving up the oil prices. Though he could not answer the exact question of mine, but he said that you just have a look at that. What could be the deployment, what could be the spread between the paper trade and the physical trade of oil? And that he said that it's somewhere close to around 1:20. And in fact, about 5 years back, I did analyze this issue, and in fact, the spread for the trade was almost 1:20, and that's how perhaps the paper trade dominates much more on spurring the oil prices compared to the actual demand and supply. And I totally agree with the statement of Dr. Ali Al-Naimi that markets had always been very well supplied, and the suppliers have no role to play the increase in oil prices. So this is fine. Shale gas, yes, there's going to be the major production from US, rest other regions would really have some small supplies by 2030. This is an analysis by BP. The spread and imbalances of oil supplies for India is going up, so there is a more imports. Now, this is an important slide. Now, we have been 90% dependent on the imports from Middle East for our oil supplies, and including China had also been about 90% dependent on the oil sourcing from Middle East. But now China has diversified its oil supplies from different regions. Our dependence on oil supplies from Middle East is somewhere close to around 65%, while China's import dependence is somewhere close to around 55-56%. But mind it that China imports almost double the crude oil from different regions compared to India, and hence in terms of actual volume, the China's imports are much more higher. This is just to give you a flavor of coal imports, what we are doing it, though it is for 2012. But yes, India is the largest coal importer in the world to really overcome its energy security issue. Why Middle East matters? In fact, yes, the Middle East matters basically because 48% of oil reserves and 25% of gas reserves, and that's going to last long for maybe 50 to 60 years to come. And that's why the Middle East matters the most when it comes to the oil and gas supplies are concerned. Yes, some measures have been taken on the energy security, on creating strategic storages, need for developing gas storages, creating sovereign wealth fund, of course, is yet to come, but yes, we have to augment more shipping capacity, which is currently at 10% of the total imports. So, yes, Middle East will continue, has played a big role, will continue to play and continues to play a big role and will play a big role in future also as far as the oil and LNG supplies to India and the rest of the world in the next 25, 30, 40 years time frame. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for giving us statistics and a lot of details about India's oil trade with the Gulf as well as energy issues with other countries as well. Well, we have about 15 minutes before we can close. So, if there are any questions, please raise your hands and identify yourself. Yes, madam. There is a lady here, yeah.
That is taking place. Okay, I will once again start. My name is Ankita Sharma and I am from MBA Energy and Environment. My question to you is that with 4-degree rise in global average temperature happening, there would be a havoc, and India planning to just restore to 40% of its renewable resources, and I do not understand how would they curb other carbon emissions. So my question is, what will be India's approach towards meeting the targets set at COP21 and beyond that?
We'll take 3 questions to start with, and then I'll request the panelists to answer. Yeah, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Mahesh Deshpande. I am from Symbiosis Law School. My question is addressed to Dr. Sharma. Yes. This is regarding the security of a nation as far as steady oil flow and supply is concerned and the price stability. I remember when oil was selling at $114 a barrel, pump prices of petrol were about 75 to 78 rupees in Pune and Mumbai. Now today the crude prices have come down by more than 60%, hovering between 40 and 50. By that count, petrol should be retailing in Pune and Mumbai at 37 rupees per liter. But actual prices is about 67 rupees and 17 paise. I just wanted you, sir, to explain this anomaly, and shouldn't the pump prices be in tandem with the crude prices and the import prices? Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Applies directly to consumer. Yeah. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah, sir, sorry, I'll repeat again. Yeah. My name is Anirban. I am also from MBA EE. Sir, my question is to Sharma, sir, that he was talking about in one of his slides, I saw that he has wrote about what is the oil pricing for next 10 years and its impact. Sir, the simple question is the ongoing crisis in Syria and the entire Middle East which have been brought into, sir, how that is going to affect the the oil pricing in the long run or in a long time, and how that is going to impact the GDP of this country, sir? Because oil prices generally vary, and once it's varied, the WPI and the IPP both goes into a toss. So it creates a CAD deficit, and also the fiscal deficit goes up, sir.
Okay. Dr. Parikh, would you like to reply?
So your question was about the INDC of India and whether India is doing enough for the global environmental issues, climate reduction, CO2 reduction. Well, this is a common but differentiated responsibility issue. All the countries have to reduce emissions in such a way that the people who have been emitting 16 tons per capita have to come down to, let's say, 2 to 3 tons, which is almost 40% 70% reduction, whereas the India may have to go up a little, as I mentioned already. 40% of the people do not have electricity, and when they have electricity, they would also need other things together. So we are also not looking at just energy, but global equity as a whole, and development equity as a whole. And for that purpose, I think India is doing fairly well by not emitting so much in the first place, and even then emitting less, trying to emit less as it grows. And in some sense, we are able to do some leapfrogging, what we call. Leapfrogging means to completely bypass certain technologies and go to another game-changing technologies. And when our other people will start having their electricity, they will be using it through LED bulbs rather than incandescent bulbs. So they would not be emitting so much subsequently. So in that sense, technology will help in to ensure that while poor get electricity, they will not emit as much as they will not add as much CO2 burden as one would expect.
I have two questions. One is on the pump prices. Actually, you mentioned 37 rupees per liter, but actually it should be 30 rupees per liter if the taxes are not included. High amount of excise, then we have the freight transportation, the sea transportation losses, the dealer's margin. That could make somewhere close to around 31 rupees, but the excise and the sales tax makes it going. Pune, I think the prices are at 67 rupees per liter. So if you discount this, you can buy your oil, you can buy your petrol for your car much cheaper than what you think. But yes, majority of money is taken away by both the government, and that's how, you have to pay 67 rupees. You can also go to the website of PPAC where they give the breakup on what amount of money goes on petrol on different charges, including transportation, the marketing margin, the freight charges, then dealer's margin, and then of course the excise and ocean losses, then excise and the VAT by the states. Otherwise, yes, the FOB price is somewhere close to at dollar-rupee parity of 65. It should be somewhere close to around 24 to 25 rupees per liter.
All the factors which you mentioned,
Yeah.
they were already even those level of high oil prices a year ago.
Right.
Considerable change in the factors operating now.
Yeah, in fact, the VAT and excise also keeps changing. So, the impact of that, and some amount, of course, in petrol, cess is not gone. It's only in diesel the cess is gone. Cess is been included. So, yes, these are the factors which make, and sometimes you are not passed on the exact. Yeah, the second question is that. How long the oil prices will remain. If I'm given a choice by God and the future markets on Chicago Mercantile Exchange and NYMEX, I would like it to be somewhere close to around, say, 10, 15, 20. Oil prices have been stable for 100 years. So maybe, I would like it to be somewhere close to around, next 50 years, because that's the time frame till then the oil is going to be produced. Of course, it may not be a low-cost oil because if you want an incremental production, you have to go through the enhanced oil recovery mechanism, and which would deploy a cost of about $30 to $40 per barrel of oil prices. But yes, still today, the majority, the 90%, 95% of oil produced is somewhere in the price range of about 10 to 15, below $10 to $15 per barrel. There is about 5%, and there is about maybe 10% of new oil, which could be produced in a price range of $50 to $60, $70 per barrel. But the major issue is that if the government want to spur the investment, they would have to reduce their production share or the profit share. And that's how the oil price, high cost oil could be developed at a much lower cost.
Concluding remarks,
I just wanted to get in on the Syria question. There has been conflict in Syria now for almost 4 years. And the oil prices have not actually risen because I think one of the reasons being that there are other more important reasons for the oil prices to go down. One of the biggest being the US becoming a major net oil exporter rather than an importer. The second is the slowing down of the global economy. Whether the Syria conflict continues, it will be whether the Chinese economy is growing, the Japanese or the Indian economies, and global economy is on a downturn right now, which is why your demand is down as well. And nobody has stopped oil production, so there is an oversupply of oil.
Just, can I add? Okay. You have countries like Iran, Iraq, they want to spur their oil from a current level of 3 million barrels per day to somewhere close to around 8 to 9, 10, 11 million barrels per day by 2030. You have Libya, where the oil production has gone down from 1.7 million barrels per day to currently at around 0.4 million barrels per day. You have Canada, you have Venezuela. I mean, all these countries are increasing their oil production, besides, of course, the oil from the shale in US. So certainly, I mean, we have a good future. There's enough oil in the Mother Earth, and you could always exploit it. Only the thing that the cost should be affordable.
Thank you. I think of the three questions, one which interests me is the climate change. And Dr. Park spoke about this. I think renewable energy, as India has promised, 40% will come from non-oil, is very, very important subject. This week's The Economist magazine put an article on this subject. And it said that electricity from imported coal-run power is 6 rupees per kilowatt hour. But if you use solar in India, it will be 5.5 rupees. Now, in Germany, 25% of their power would be from solar by 2020. Why can't India do that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You'll all agree with me. We had excellent presentations, very informative and very futuristic also. I would like to request you to join me in giving applause to all the panelists.
I would now like to request Ambassador Devre to kindly felicitate the speakers. His Excellency Maqbool Ali Sultan. Dr. Jyoti Parekh. Ms. Indrani Bagchi. And Dr. Sharma. I would like to request Dr. Muzumdar sir to kindly felicitate Ambassador Devre. I would like to request the audience to kindly remain seated while the dignitaries leave the dais.